Hi everyone, Dean Matters here. Just made a video on restoring my old Rogers DYNASONIC snare drum. It's a chrome over brass, I think probably 60s. It's a 7-line DYNASONIC. It was just getting to the point where the mechanisms were a bit tired and everything needed to be re-lubricated. And I thought I may as well take it apart and clean everything, re-lubricate everything, and get it working the way it should be working. There was also an issue with the snare wires that there was a little bit of a sharp edge on the bottom of the snare wires, and that little sharp edge needed to be taken off, so because it put a hole in the bottom head. So I had to fix that, put new heads on it. Yeah, just a polish and brought it back to life again. So, I made this video in 3 parts. So it's quite a long process to totally disassemble the drum and clean it, put it back together, fix certain things. So it is a guide. Please be careful when you are restoring old drums like this. You don't want to scratch anything and damage anything where it can't be repaired. This is part 1 of 3 parts. Hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified. Oh, and hit the bell for notification, and you'll be notified when the next 2 parts are up on my channel. So let's get into it. Okay, here we have a vintage Rogers DYNASONIC snare drum. It's I'm not exactly sure what era this particular drum's from. It's a 7-line DYNASONIC, so the 7 lines here indicate that it's a certain time period that this drum was made. Most of them are 5-line. So I'll get started with dismantling everything. Okay, I'll start taking all the hardware off the shell. Okay, at this stage I'm going to see if I can open the strainer mechanism, clean that out and lubricate the mechanism so that's a little bit more, it feels kind of dry in there, so it might just need a little bit of grease. So I'll open that up. Looks like it's just 2 screws. Looks like there might be one unoriginal screw there. That one there, I don't know which one would be the original, but it's a darker one, well, a Phillips head one and a flat one, so I'm thinking the flat one's probably the original. Okay, so there's just the top piece and this, and the lever where the hole locates into that one there, where my little finger is on that side. That kind of thing there. So it looks like it probably needs, and there's old grease and grime in there, a little bit of lubricant in there would probably do it good. Not a lot, because I think a lot of sawdust from sticks and things would get caught in here too, so it probably needs to be quite a thin lubricant. So I'll clean that up in WD-40, and it all looks in good condition. On this side, so this piece lifts off as well. So there's the backing plate, this backing plate here, which is just what the screws will hold onto on the other side. And then we've got all this slide mechanism here, and the thread feels a little bit sticky, so I'll clean that and put a little bit of grease on that thread. I think I'll use, if I've got it, some brake cleaner to clean that grease out really quickly, and it will dry really fast too. So some brake cleaner, good for cleaning grease off parts quickly, and it dries really quickly too. Okay, so these are the cleaned parts now. I've just sprayed them with brake cleaner. I can see there's a little bit of grease still in one of those holes. Just push that through. So this would be the hole where it locates onto that point there. But I'll just go through and put a little bit of grease on a few different points and then put it back together. So I'm just going to put a cotton bud or a Q-tip in there, just a little bit. Just really kind of paint it on certain areas where the contacts are. So on that round point there where it goes onto the lever, just going to put a little bit around there. In the hole. Now that obviously slides against the back of that point as well. So I'm just going to put a little bit behind it as well. And there is a tiny, I think it's a bearing, I'm not 100% sure, but it's the smallest bearing I've ever seen. But that is a tiny little bearing on there. I'm thinking maybe a tiny bit of oil to get inside there as well will give that the best chance. And on the outside of that is going to go inside that slide here. So I'm just going to paint inside the slide just a small film of grease on there. And this is always a controversial thing of whether to use grease or not, because of it can dust and stuff can stick to it, so a very small amount. So I'll just see how it goes. If I feel like there's anything getting in there, I'll clean it out and use something else. So a little bit of oil in there, very thin oil. I'll see what I've got. Alright, this oil is extremely liquidy, not very viscous at all, but it's probably all that little tiny bearing needs is something like this. This is actually for a paper shredder. You can see the image on the front, so it lubricates the blades of a paper shredder, which is probably really similar to sewing machine oil in thickness. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit on that bearing. Hopefully it won't go everywhere. Let's see. So just a drop on there. So it's probably even too much at the moment. There's a drop sitting on top of it, and it's just worked its way in now. Alright, so just clean up the excess with a rag. Just put a little bit more grease on the back because I just wiped some off. And now for the thread, for the tension adjustment. Now there's a point there where this is spinning into, this little block here. A little bit of oil on there would do that good as well, because that is a pivot point. So I'm going to put a little bit of that oil on there as well. Just work it in. I can feel it's better already. I'd say probably a bit of that same oil on that thread as well. So I'm just using a small amount, just a drop. So do it all the way up and do it all the way back so it's all coated. Might put a drop underneath as well, just to make sure it's in there. I'm just undoing it, so trying to get a coating all down the thread. So that's probably all that needs. Now there are some friction points here where there's not a lot of friction going on. It's pretty much just a sliding mechanism, but I think I'll leave these in between points dry. I don't think there's going to be a lot of friction there. But that's better already. This is one of those things where you don't want it to be too loose because it would back off while you're playing. So it's a balance. You need a bit of friction. Alright, so that's everything lubricated. Perfect. Just going to go over it now with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, this product here for cleaning, just to see if any of this tarnish will come off. I'll use another Q-tip for that. So the back of this is clean. I'm just going to spray it onto the end of this. Alright, next step is going to be to dismantle the lugs, take the springs out of the lugs and take the inserts out so I can soak those inserts in some WD-40 just to give them a good clean in the threads, get any old grease out or any old brass that's worn from the tension rods, and I'll give these lugs a soak in some soapy water. Alright, I'm going to soak all of these in WD-40 and the tension rods in WD-40 as well, just to get any old grease and grime off those, and soak all these lugs in some soapy water. Okay, now this is where I'm going to try to repair the sharp edges where the hole was formed in the resonance side head, in the snare side head, from the sharp edges of, I can't remember which end, I'm pretty sure it's this end. They, actually I saw, yeah, there's open kind of soldering just here. The tops of the pieces of steel of the windings are exposed here. I'm just going to try and sand that down with a little sanding bit in the Dremel kind of tool. So I'm just going to knock off anything that feels slightly sharp or rough. I'll do it down both ends if it feels bad, but this end feels pretty good, so I might just concentrate this end. Alright, that feels a lot better. Didn't take much at all just to knock those edges off. And this end's pretty good. So that's the end of part one. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the next two parts are uploaded. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.